Worries about Star Wars goes beyond movies. Uh, yeah, I'm worried. I think I'm worried. Should I be worried?
There's nothing to worry about.
Who's worried?
How's it going, everybody? This is Phil. So, this is a pretty good article I thought I'd share that examines the Star Wars intellectual property as a Disney owned brand and how several revenue segments within the brand are affected across the board when a particular segment of the IP underperforms. So I won't do too much joking around here, since this is an article worth paying attention to, as it breaks down some interesting math to help illustrate points, but I will add a few things here and there. This article comes to us from SeekingAlpha.com, which offers financial commentary and analysis written by finance experts. The author of this article is Kiefer Tuck. So let's begin. So they have a summary, okay? Consumer products and interactive media are seeing income decline for Disney. Toy companies are selling less and less Star Wars toys. And the Star Wars woes have also extended to video games as well. Okay, so Star Wars is one of Disney's most important pieces of intellectual property, or IP. Star Wars was purchased for over $4 billion in 2012. Since the purchase, Disney has had lots of success. The Force Awakens smashed box office records and currently holds the domestic box office record of over $900 million. The next film, The Last Jedi, seemed to be a bag of mixed reactions, to say the least. Once again, though questions were dismissed, as The Last Jedi made plenty of revenue. Now, look, I've said this before. It's hard to wrap your head around something that makes $1 billion as being a disappointment. But The Last Jedi, even though it didn't lose money, it certainly didn't have the profit margin Disney was expecting. You know, especially after the monster success of The Force Awakens. So, if we do a quick side-by-side comparison here from some numbers that I pulled real quick, you can see the totals for both films. All right, so The Force Awakens domestic box office was $936 million, opposed to The Last Jedi came in at $620, and the foreign was $1,131 million, as opposed to The Last Jedi's $712. So the worldwide gross of The Force Awakens was $2,068 million, and the worldwide gross of The Last Jedi was 1.3 billion, let's say. All right. Now, that's a difference of roughly $735 million, or approximately a 36% drop in total box office receipts. Now, granted, if you look, you can see The Force Awakens had the benefit of 6 additional weeks in the theatrical run. So it was 24 weeks for The Force Awakens and 18 weeks for The Last Jedi. But The Last Jedi opened in a wider release. All right, so it was 4,232 theaters as opposed to 4,134 theaters. So almost 100 more theaters. Now, if we do a quick side-by-side comparison of both movies out the gate, with the highest amount of theaters for each film initially, right from the outset, the numbers show The Last Jedi underperforming The Force Awakens week to week. Okay, so opening weekend we had 247 million for The Force Awakens as opposed to 220. Then for week 2, we had $149 million, a 40% drop. But if you look at week 2 for The Last Jedi, it was 71 million. Okay, a 67% drop. And in its second weekend, it didn't even make half of what The Force Awakens made. And And these are more theaters and a highly anticipated sequel. So, it continues to follow a trend. This is the third week of Force Awakens at 90 million, the third week of The Last Jedi at 52, and then the fourth week is at 42 million for The Force Awakens, and then at only 23 million for the fourth week for The Last Jedi. And then there's a significant drop in theaters on week 5 for The Force Awakens. It still had 3,800 theaters where it was playing in, where we only had 3,000 here. But if you want to shoot all the way over to week 18, if you look, The Last Jedi had 28 theaters still playing the movie. It made 5,800. If we go all the way to week 24, The Force Awakens had 20 theaters, and it still made 16,000, so 3 times the amount in its 24th week than what The Last Jedi did in its 18th week, and The Last Jedi had 8 more theaters to pull numbers from. So this movie is an underperformer. It might have turned a profit, it might have gotten into the black, but it should be considered a disappointment by the standards set and the bar that was raised so high by this movie here, The Force Awakens. Like I said, in the end, it might have cleared a $1 billion hurdle, but by no means did it reach and surpass expectations, considering it was a follow-up to a hugely successful $2 billion movie in the biggest film franchise ever, poised to reap the benefits of any prior story arcs, setups, or character development carried over from The Force Awakens. Not to mention, in The Last Jedi, you had the inclusion of the franchise's flagship character, Luke Skywalker, who had not uttered a single word on screen for almost 35 years. The Last Jedi's final cume is the epitome of box office fool's gold. And without the strong lead-in of The Force Awakens and the Star Wars logo slapped across it, it would have been lucky to do half the numbers it ended up doing. Okay, so let's continue. So I said, once again, the questions were dismissed as The Last Jedi made plenty of revenue. With the recent release of Solo, skepticism is rising. A Wall Street analyst told The Hollywood Reporter that Solo could lose more than $50 million. And we've seen that number easily be thrown around upwards of 80 million. And a lot of people are suggesting that that sum could be way higher when you factor in basically the double budget for reshooting that movie twice, and then the marketing involved. It's a major loss, and the movie will not cross over into the black for Disney. Certainly not for a theatrical run. It's clawing its way to 400 million, which is just. It looks like it would take an act of God, the return of Jesus himself, to come down and save that movie. So there's no way to tell at this point how much money Solo lost, but it is true Solo underperformed by most standards, by pretty much every standard. But most movies aren't the only way Disney makes money. Disney's business model has lots of synergy between its 4 segments: media networks, parks and resorts, studio entertainment, and consumer products. The success of one segment leads to success in other segments. If lots of people see a Star Wars movie, then it can be expected that toy sales will rise. Vice versa, a failure in one segment could lead to the failure in other segments. The failure of Solo was not the first red flag for Star Wars. Visible weakness in the Star Wars franchise had been visible long before Solo in consumer products and interactive media. So, consumer products and interactive media. Consumer products and interactive media makes up about 10% of Disney's revenue, which is around half of what studio entertainment makes. When it comes to operating income, consumer products and interactive media is even more important, making up about 12% of Disney's total operating income. So, for the purposes of this article, let's discuss what operating income is. Operating income is an accounting figure that measures the amount of profit realized from a business's operations after deducting operating expenses such as wages, depreciation, and cost of goods sold. Operating income takes a company's gross income, which is equivalent to total revenue minus cost of goods sold, and subtracts all operating expenses. A business's operating expenses are costs incurred from normal operating activities and include items such as office supplies and utilities. Operating income is a measurement that shows how much a company's revenue will eventually become profit. So to sum that up in a more manageable and simplified equation, operating income equals gross income minus operating expenses. So you can see here, they're talking about how consumer products and interactive media makes up 10% of Disney's revenue, but the operating income number pushes that up to 12% and closes the gap on studio entertainment. Now I'm assuming because movies are so wildly expensive to produce, and then you need to factor in marketing, and then profitability is dependent upon whether or not the public embraces the film and turns out to see them. The profit margin can be unpredictable for any number of unforeseen reasons, including the volatility of large fan bases who reject the studio's offering and elects to not go and see the film because it strays too far away from loyal fans and customers, what they have come to expect from an established franchise. In the end, box office receipts suffer as a result, and we've seen this with Solo. Whereas with the consumer products and interactive media, there's more cost control involved to manufacture the product, allowing Disney to turn around and offer merchandise for a considerable markup. But as we've all seen in the last few years, the merchandise hasn't been selling as well as it has in the past, especially when it comes to the Star Wars brand, which used to fly off the shelves. Just as Toys R Us had that turned out for them. Now the other numbers here that are noteworthy, aside from the parks and resorts numbers that are at 26%, that segment of Disney's business model is solid and continues to pretty much show gains in attendance and profits year to year. But look at that media networks number, 47%. That's a huge operating income percentage. That number right there is a big indicator of why Disney is so keen to get its streaming service up and running. Now, obviously, Star Wars won't be the only content offered on Disney's streaming service, but the brand recognition, even in its current tarnished state, is a huge carrot to dangle in front of potential subscribers. Just look at the incredibly well-received fan reaction to the Clone Wars show being resurrected, right? And then you have the Jon Favreau live-action show, which is going to be an exclusive. Then you have the potential for exclusive movies coming to that streaming service, and all this stuff. It indicates Disney's desire and necessity for the Star Wars brand to get back to a place where it was only a few short years ago, when there was less turmoil and drama, and far more universal acclaim and excitement for whatever project was next in line. So now if we go to the next page, so it says, as it can be seen when it comes to income generation, consumer products are almost as important as studio entertainment. So the margin is a lot closer than we would think here between the profit for the studio as opposed to consumer products and interactive media. Okay, so Disney has seen good performance across all of its segments except the consumer products and interactive media. Even with ESPN shrinking, the media network segment managed to grow revenue by 3.2% last quarter, even if income shrank by 6.3%. Consumer products and interactive media had income shrink by 3.5% last quarter. What's more concerning, though, is that comparable store sales shrank because of a decrease in sales from Star Wars merchandise. That statement comes directly from Disney on last quarter's 10Q. All right. And this is a big deal here. Decline in toy sales in 2017. Even before last quarter, the Star Wars franchise was already starting to crack. In 2017, toy sales for companies like Mattel were down, and that was partly due to weaker Star Wars merchandise sales. Hasbro has also struggled in 2017 due to weaker Star Wars sales. The toy maker specifically said lower sales from both Star Wars and Frozen contributed to the company missing analysis targets. So, and you can see here, sales of Hasbro brands by segment in quarter 4, 2017. All right, so you can see franchise brands was up 11%, partner brands was down 21%, Hasbro Gaming down 4%, and emerging brands down 5%. And here's the thing. The partner brand segment, which was down 21%, consists of Star Wars, Frozen, and Marvel. So that's a big problem right now. Now Frozen will bounce back. There's a movie coming out. Marvel, Marvel's going to sell. Right now, the kids, Marvel is Star Wars for a lot of kids in this generation. Star Wars needs to get itself back to a place where the kids are dying to have the toys, and they want to get them in their hands, and they want to go on adventures with these action figures and these play sets and these vehicles, like kids did in the 70s and the 80s and part of the 90s. And it doesn't seem to be, at least not with these new movies, there doesn't seem to be that type of strong desire, at least from not from what I've seen. So Star Wars was still the best-selling toys from 2017 holiday period, but sales were down from 2016. Matthew Townsend and Christopher Palmieri of Bloomberg think the decrease in sales were because of such high demand from the initial reboot of Star Wars back in 2016. The value of Star Wars as IP is in question. Going forward, it will be interesting if toy makers value the brand as much as they do. It is also worth mentioning that Toys R Us already went out of business. Hasbro and Mattel are continuing to see sales decline into Q1 of 2018. Even if the Star Wars IP is worth a lot, changing consumer preferences might end up hurting Disney in the short run. Okay. And the final page, Star Wars video games. Electronic Arts released Star Wars Battlefront 2 last year, a sequel to Star Wars Battlefront. Sales were disappointing for this game, which only sold 9 million copies, even though the target was 10 million. Worse than that, the first game, Star Wars Battlefront, sold 13 million copies. Electronics Art did have a lot of problems with the release of Battlefront 2. Fans were angry about microtransactions, small purchases that are made within the game. Even if Electronic Arts' execution was great, the high body count of companies that have seen woes related to Star Wars is troubling. So in conclusion, the movie Solo created some worries about the Star Wars franchise, but shareholders should have been worried long before that. Star Wars was a great purchase for Disney, as can be seen from all the income that it has generated. But going forward, it will be important to see if Star Wars is a lasting source of extreme demand, since all of Disney's segments succeed and fail together. I expect product sales to be weaker going into the latter half of this year. Keep a close eye on Star Wars and not just the movies. So, that's it, guys. Like I said, I just thought this was an interesting article, and I figured I'd share. It's not too over the top or clubs you over the head with numbers and stats like a Scott Meddlesome Forbes article. But it still does a little bit of breakdown and analysis, just enough in my opinion. Plus, now we all know what operating income means. I think as Disney and Lucasfilm try to get things moving in the right direction, between the movies, the merchandise, the streaming service, and lest we not forget the massive Star Wars land expansions coming to both Disneyland on the West Coast here in the U.S., as well as Disney World in Florida on the East Coast. It's going to be pretty fascinating on the business end of things to see if they can get all four segments discussed in this article working in concert with each other and really dial in the kind of synergy that allows for each part to complement and feed off of and into the next segment, essentially allowing a perpetual loop of intellectual property success. And we all know there's plenty of work still to be done to get to that point. The brand has certainly taken a lot of hits in the last, in the last several months. And it goes a lot deeper than just the movie side of things. So, whether or not they take the necessary steps to achieve that end goal remains to be seen. And look, here's hoping they do, because I'm a big fan of Disney. I'm a huge fan of Lucasfilm. And nothing would make me happier than to see Star Wars thrive once again, and things working like a well-oiled machine. Wait a minute. Did somebody say oil? Okay, gang. So thanks to all for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment down below, even just to say hello. And if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing to my channel. I've noticed recently that people who watch and aren't subscribers versus subscribers that do watch, the people who aren't subscribers, that number seems to be significantly higher. So again, consider subscribing if you like this video, and hit that little bell so you can get notified the next time a video goes up. That's it for me, guys. So have a great day. Be happy, be safe, be healthy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.